Okay. How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? We open up the Word document. If you're watching us online at home, please say hi. A little more straight. We got so quiet so quickly. It was so noisy, then they got quiet. What? Okay, that's power. It's influence. It's not power. It's a big difference in influence and power, but that's not going to be tonight's class. Tonight's class is going to be a beautiful class as well. It is going to be in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef, whose yahrzeit is actually this week. So his neshama should have an excellent, beautiful elevation in Gan Eden. And if you are watching us, please do say hi. Let me make sure this is the right way. Yes. There you go. Okay. Ready, my friends? Oh, actually, this looks good. This is still crooked, but whatever. What's this way a little bit? There we go. I know this is crooked. Let's see who's watching us on Chabad.org. We got Ravit is watching, Ravit Shalom, and Lori is watching. Where's Michael and Kim? Yeah, she's not watching me, not on Facebook or in person. Yes, okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How are you? So I will begin, and Miyakel is watching us, so I know some beautiful words we'll share afterwards. So I'll begin tonight. We're going to be talking about the power of your Jewish name. So I'll start with a joke. It's actually a good joke, but some people may not get it. It's a little dangerous. You have to, but we'll try. I have faith in you guys. I said it to my kids last night. Some of my kids got it, some didn't get it. He didn't get it. What? So two are sleeping already. But my wife said I can say it. I got my wife's permission to say this joke. I didn't think she would let me say it. I'm building up the suspense. I got clearance. So these three old friends are sitting together in Russia, the old country, and they're talking about coming to America. And their names are Beryl and Chaimel and Shmerel. So Beryl, Chaimel, and Shmerel are sitting together, and they're talking about one day they're going to move to America. And Beryl says, I'm going to come to America. They're not going to call me Beryl. It's not going to work. They'll change my name. They'll start calling me Buck. Buck is a good, it's a good American nickname. Instead of Beryl, they'll call me Buck. Okay. Chaimel says, same thing. I'm going to come to America. They're not going to call me Chaimel. They'll call me Chuck. Very good. So Shmerel is listening to this conversation, and Shmerel says, oh no, if they're going to change everything to Chuck at the end, I'm not moving to America. Steve got it before. He's good. He's fast. Okay. And Steve got it eventually. Oh, no, he got it. He was supposed to be the answer. So Shmerel, if you change to Buck and to Chuck and you go with the Shmerel, it becomes something else. Okay. So let's talk about the Jewish names, not just the Jewish nicknames, but the power of names. And why are we talking about names today? How does that mean in the Bible? How is that relevant to this week's Torah reading? So what is this week's? Anyone know the name of this week's Torah reading? Shemot. Shemot is actually the very first parsha in the second book of the 5 books of Moses. The second book of the 5 books of Moses is called Exodus. That's what it's called in English. If you look in the, in the Septuagint, or how we pronounce it, yeah, you're right. The second book is usually mistranslated as Exodus. The second book of the Torah in Hebrew is called silence. Wow. People watching online will think there's no one in the room. The second book of the Torah, Stephanie, do you know? Anyone? Ravit, someone watching? Lori? What's the second book of the Torah called? In Hebrew. I'll give you a hint. What's this week's parsha called? Shemot. Shemot. Don't be embarrassed. Say it loud. Shemot. Exactly. Shemot. In Hebrew, this week's parsha, and this week's, the whole second book of the Torah is called the book of Shmos. And in Hebrew, what does the word Shemot mean? Names. Very good, Michelle. Names. Shem is name. Shmot in plural is names with an S at the end. So really, the authentic and accurate translation of both the name of this week's Torah reading and actually the entire second book of the 5 books of Moses should be names. That would be the correct English translation of the Hebrew word Shmot. They messed that one up big time because Exodus and names, not really the same thing at all. So why indeed is it called Shmot? Why is it called names? So Stephanie ready to something new. Oh, Michael's watching us. Hello, Michael. Okay, I'm glad you're watching, and good evening, Maria. So if you're watching on my personal page, I'm going to share my screen, or you can open up the book of Shmot, the book of Exodus. Go to chapter 1, verse number 1. And what does it say in chapter 1, verse number 1? Ve'ela Shmot B'nai Yisrael. These are the names of B'nai Yisrael, the sons of Israel. Haba'im Mitzrayim, who came to Egypt. Actually, this is also not a good translation. Literally, Haba'im means coming, but obviously they weren't coming. This is already after they all died. It's repeating those that had come in the past who came to Egypt. Each man with his household came with Yaakov. And who are they? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, and Yisachar, and Zvulun, and Benjamin, Gad, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, all the souls that emanated from the loins of Yaakov, 70 souls, including Yosef, who was already in Egypt. So here, my friends, you have the first 5 verses of the opening of the book of Shmot and the book of Exodus, and it's called the book of names because it begins with counting the names of each one of the 12 sons of Yaakov, beginning with Reuven and Shimon and Levi and Yehuda and Yisachar and Zvulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and even Yosef, who wasn't counted as one of those who came down from Israel to Egypt because he was already there, gets his own special mention. Let's not forget Yosef. He was already there in Egypt, but he also is one of the 12 sons of Yaakov. Now, what's the obvious question on this? Nothing is obvious? What's the obvious question? Why is it repeating the 12 names of Jacob's sons? You don't know their names? Their names are written countless times in the book of Genesis. When they're born, we know their names. And in fact, the book of Exodus, or the second, let me be authentic. The book of Shmot is not about the names of the 12 tribes of Jacob. The 12 tribes already died at the end of last week's Torah reading. Yosef died, all the other brothers died, that's over. That generation is the last generation. The entire theme of this entire book is the story of Egyptian slavery, and then eventually the Exodus, when the Jews leave Egypt. That's the whole theme. That's the whole point of the book, right? If you're familiar with the timeline of the second book of the Torah, it begins right after these 5 verses. It begins with Pharaoh saying, the Jews are mass producing, having a lot of kids. Let's be wise and deal with them, and mass producing. Chabad style, yeah. Having a lot of kids, big problem. Let's see what we can do about it. And they try to find a way to stop the Jews. And they tell the midwives to kill the babies, and midwives don't listen. So they make a decree to throw the babies in the Nile. I mean, you know the story. That's the story. So it's a recap, okay, but it's an unnecessary recap. You could just say the sons of Jacob came to Egypt, and the Egyptians began to oppress them. But we know that's how the last book ended. And to go into detail, even if you felt the need to remind the reader, so to say, where you're holding in the story, in case you forgot from last Saturday to today, where we're holding, you have short-term memory loss. So let me remind you, the Jews came from Egypt, from Israel, they came to Egypt, and the slavery began. That would only take 1 verse. Instead, we have 5 verses. 5 verses. They're short, but it's 5 verses. Every time you see the colon, it's a verse. It's 5 verses to mention each one of the names of these 12 tribes who are no longer alive and who really have nothing to do with the story of the bondage and the slavery and the suffering and the Exodus. So why are the names here? Why is it necessary to repeat that their names? It's a good question. And also, like, that's the reason why in English they don't say the Book of Names, because the Book of Names doesn't, in their mind, in the secular mind, how does the Book of Names reflect the theme and the underlying motif of the second book of the Bible? It doesn't. There's really nothing to do one to the other. But really, it actually is very much connected to the names. And the Torah had to repeat the names. Why? So on this, there is quite a fascinating medrash. Now, there's actually several different medrashes that say the same thing, more or less, with variations. There's one very famous version, which is not the one that I'm quoting, even though it's one that the Rebbe quoted often. I'm going to read a different one because I like the ending of it. And the ending is quite powerful. And I want to really appreciate the beautiful language, so to say, of the Medrash. So the Medrash gives us an answer. Says the Medrash, this is a Medrash from the book of Vayikra, chapter 32, number 5. Rav Huna said in the name of Bar Kapara, there are 4 reasons why Israel was redeemed from Egypt. Number 1, they did not change their names. Number 2, they did not change their language. Number 3, they did not speak Lashon Hara, slander. And number 4, none among them was found to be sexually immoral. So these are the 4 merits of the Jewish people who were not righteous. When the Jews came down to Israel, to Egypt, they assimilated in many ways to Egyptian culture. But despite having lost a lot of their connection, and they worship idols, etc., they never changed their names, they never changed their language, they never spoke bad about each other, and they behaved sexually in a morally righteous way, as they had learned from Sarah, their mother, when she had been kidnapped by Avshalom, etc., by the king of Pharaoh. And the Medrash goes through to bring sources and to explain each one of these 4. What's the first one? They did not, Leshinu es Shmam, they did not change their name. Says the Medrash, I'm quoting from the Medrash, word by word. Reuven and Shimon descended to Egypt, and Reuven and Shimon ascended from Egypt. Now the Hebrew is like the Aramaic is really beautiful. It says Reuven v'Shimon Salkin, Reuven v'Shimon Nachtin, Reuven v'Shimon Salkin. They went down as Reuven and Shimon, and when they left, they were still Reuven and Shimon. They did not call Yehuda by the name Rupa. They did not call Reuven Luliani, nor Yosef did they call him Leistis, and they did not call Benjamin Alexandri. This is quoting the Medrash. It's not my own, examples. The Medrash says, it went down as Reuven, he came out as Reuven. Yehuda didn't become Rupa, and Reuven didn't become Luliani, Yosef didn't become Listis, Benjamin didn't become Alexandri. They stayed exactly who they were. And this, my friends, is an extremely, extremely powerful message for us. The Medrash is saying that the reason why the Torah repeats each one of the 12 Hebrew names of the 12 sons of Jacob, even though they're no longer alive when this story takes place. The whole beginning of the suffering only began after the brothers had long passed away. Nevertheless, the reason why we merited to have the Exodus, what kept us going throughout all of our suffering and our slavery and our dark, long, bitter exile in Egypt, what kept us going? What was our merit? That we came to Egypt as Reuven and Shimon, and we left as Reuven and Shimon. Imagine this Egyptian taskmaster is beating this Jewish slave, and he comes home after being beaten, and he says, who am I? I'm Yitzchak, I don't know. I'm Avraham, I'm Yaakov, whatever. I'm Reuven, I'm a grandson of Reuven. And they kept their Jewish names, despite their slavery, despite the intense pressure on the Jews to blend in. The Jewish girls were Pharaoh wanted to assimilate and integrate the Egyptian girls into their society. The man, he wanted to kill them. The woman, he wanted to take them and keep them. So he didn't want to kill the girls. And yet, despite doing everything it could to try and make the girls become Egyptian girls, they kept on walking around with their Jewish names, Miriam, Yocheved, whatever their Jewish names were, and they didn't give it up. Not their language. The famous Medrash says, not their clothing. They wore Jewish clothing. They spoke a Jewish language, Hebrew, and they kept their Jewish names. And therefore, the entire book of the second book of the Torah that talks about the slavery and the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt is called not Exodus in Hebrew. Authentically, it's not called Exodus. It's called Shmot. It's called names. To tell you that the secret that helped us maintain our identity and to empower us and enable us to be able to leave Egypt was the fact that through all of those 210 years that the Jewish people found themselves in Egypt, they did not change their Hebrew names. It's a very powerful message. It's a beautiful message. And obviously that takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of inner strength, a lot of fortitude to raise your child in Egypt and not let them think that they're, I don't know, whatever the Egyptian names were, Lilianis and Rupa and whatever the Egyptian names were, but today say you're Mark and Tony and whatever. But to raise them to say, no, you're a Jewish child, which really means you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're part of the Jewish people. And that is the story of our ability to survive slavery. Knowing that at our core, we're not defined by the culture in which we live, but we're defined by our Jewish names. We're defined by our Jewish identity. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What is the power of a Jewish name? Not just a Jewish name. What is the power of your Jewish name? That's what we're going to talk about today. And it obviously is very much connected to Torah reading because the whole Torah reading is called names. It's all about the power of our names to enable us to survive in Egyptian suffering. So, I'll just tell you one more thing, by the way. What does slavery do to you? Dehumanizes you. Slavery is all about taking away your human component, your independence, your identity, and dehumanizing you, as you said correctly. Right? The Nazis were experts at this. What did the Nazis do to us in the concentration camps? Took away our names and gave us numbers. That's correct. That was a critical component of the dehumanizing that the Nazis very effectively did. And so how did the Jews survive what the Egyptians wanted to do? Very similar to the Germans. And actually, I don't want to get into it now. I went to the whole class on the similarities. How the Egyptians didn't just enslave the Jews. They dehumanized the Jews. They wanted to take away our Jewish identity. And keeping your name means that I'm not a slave. Slavery is when I take away your identity from you. The Jewish people keeping their names was basically them saying, I have an identity that will not be defined by you, our Egyptian masters, captors, etc. And that's very, very powerful. That's very, very powerful. Okay. So, my friends, let's talk about the power of a Jewish name. What is a Jewish name? So, generally, we have names. Why do we have names? What is the purpose of a name? It's identify. You need a way of identifying that this is, I'm asking you for a cup, not a plate, right? So, a cup it's a way of knowing what is. So, we need names. However, in Jewish thought, in the Jewish wisdom, the names of something, the Hebrew names of something, are not just tags or labels that people arbitrarily gave to things or to people so we'll know who we're talking about. If we wouldn't have names, so I wouldn't know who's Sidel, who's Barbara, so now I know about you and not you, right? But there's no inherent connection between you and your name and you and your name other than for whatever reason at your birth, your parents gave you Barbara, gave you Sidel. And it could have been the other way around, and you be Sidel and you be Barbara, and okay. And then, but you still be the same person. In Jewish thought, we know that the name of something reflects its reality. The name of something is not just a tag or a label by which we identify it. The Hebrew name of something is a reflection of its inner essence. We find this going all the way back to when Adam stood and gave names to all the creatures. The verse says that Adam looked at each and every single living creature, and what did he do? He called it its name, and that was its name. I probably should put this into the source sheet. He called each and every living creature by its name, and the rabbis tell us, what did he call it by its name? When he called it by its name, he was able to understand what is the spiritual DNA of this particular creature. So let me explain to you. A very good example, help you understand. If you look at a computer game, a computer program, what are you seeing on the front end? You're seeing graphics, you're seeing sounds, colors, music, a little guy jumping up and down in the air, whatever you're seeing on the computer screen, right? But if you were to know how to do computer coding, you would understand that there's a back end, it's called the HTML code, that makes the program run. And so this little guy is bouncing up and down on the screen. Actually, there's a code of, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of different letters and words. And every inch he jumps up is, it's written, X up. I'm not an expert in coding. It's not one of my expertise, but I've seen what it looks like. It's on the back end of our website. I'm able to see it. This coding.
It's like a language.
It's a language. It is a language. It is a language. And every single color has letters and numbers that describe that color. Every size, every font has letters and colors. Every space, every break, it's written there. So it's not like the space is like an empty space between this letter and that letter. In the HTML code, it says space, colon, arrow, whatever, next line, tab, indent, et cetera, and then whatever the code is of that particular color, and then whatever the code is of that particular font, and then that letter, et cetera. Well, that's correct. That's what it looks like, more or less, in a very general sense. The exact same thing is true in the creation of our world. There's an HTML code. It's not called HTML code. It's called the Hebrew code. But the letters of the alphabet by which God speaks the world into existence. That's how the world was created, right? God spoke, and the world came to be. We say this every morning in our prayers. Hu amar vayehi. He spoke, and it was. Hu tziva vayamod. He commanded, and it came to be. So when God spoke, that was how every single creation was created. So when Adam came to name the animals, what did Adam do? Adam looked at a lion. Okay? Adam looked at a lion and he saw, because of the spiritual greatness of Adam was able to look at the lion and say, wow, this is an Aryeh. Aryeh in Hebrew is spelled Aleph Resh Yud Hey. Aleph Resh Yud Hey is 4 different Hebrew letters that are, what's this over here? Are 4 Hebrew letters. And he looked at these 4 Hebrew letters and said, this is the letters that form the energy of this lion. It's defined. These are the letters that define it. And that's what it means that Adam named all the animals. He named them. What did he name them? He was able to truly see exactly what it is that they were. He looked at a tiger. He looked at a lion, at a giraffe, he looked at a bear. Oh, the bear. This is the energy of these Hebrew letters, Daled, Vav, Vet, Dov. And this is a wolf, is a Ze'ev, Zayin, Aleph, Bet. This is the letters that reflect this energy. And because of his greatness, he was able to look at the animals, and he was able to see, according to Kabbalah, how the life source of this particular animal, its unique life source, not just it came from God, the unique variation of letters that it came down to allow it to be this particular kind of creature. So he called it by the letters that reflected the unique divine energy that created this animal. Understand? The angels, by the way, couldn't even do this. The angels couldn't do this. There's a famous medrash that when God was going to make man, and the angels were like, why making man? We don't want the man. So God said, yeah, what are all these other creatures that I made called? And they couldn't name all the animals. And after God made man, so he brought the creatures before Adam. And this is an ox. That's a shar. This is a chamor. It's a donkey. Chamor. And we don't know exactly each animal why those letters reflect it. But even the angels couldn't see the divine energy within the animals the way he could. There's much, much more to explain about how letters are the building blocks of creation, but I don't want to get too distracted in that. I just want to bring out this very critical idea, and I'm going to apply it to people, to us. Letters in Hebrew, and therefore Hebrew words, and Hebrew names, are not just reflection, or just not just names or labels that we chose arbitrarily to give things. A Hebrew name is our reflection of the essence of that thing. The unique code that makes this guy jump 2 feet and that guy jump 3 feet or 2 inches and 3 inches, and that he sings, I don't know, Old MacDonald, and this guy sings, push that button, he'll sing Yankee Doodle Went to Town. I don't know. There's a code that makes him sing this song or that song. That's the code that makes a lion different from a tiger, and different from a bear, and different from a wolf, and different from an ox, and different from et cetera, et cetera. You guys following this? Okay, it's very important. And again, I don't want to get distracted on the Kabbalistic power of the letters to be the building blocks of creation. Maybe another class will go into it more, both in the way the letters are shaped, and the way the letters sound, and the many aspects to it. But just understand this truth. Letters reflect divine energies of creation. And therefore, when Adam looked at an animal, he saw the lion. This is an aryeh, not because he was looking for a word by which people in the future would know, oh, there's a lion coming, right? He called it an aryeh because those letters, Aleph, Resh, Yud, Hey, reflect the energy that created the unique dimensions and sounds and energy of a lion. So now, let's go back to us peoples, us human beings. We have a name. Our name is not just a name by which I can tell you apart from someone else. So he doesn't say Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, but that you each have a name, so I know who to call you. The name that you have, and by this, when I say name, I mean your Hebrew name, because that's the Hebrew letters of creation, the Hebrew letters which contain the divine energy of all creation, all existence. In your Hebrew name is an expression and a reflection of your essence. That's a very strong statement, I know, but it's 100% true. Your name is a reflection of who you are. Who you are. And you see this throughout the Torah. Almost every single time when the Torah tells us about the naming of a person, when a child is born and they're named, the Torah tells us why they were given that name. When Noach was born, the Torah tells us that his parents called him Noach, and the Torah tells us why they called him Noach. Why? Because this person will bring the chama, will bring comfort to the world. Noach is in the world to relax. Noach is like when you relax. It's Noach. Menucha is the same root word of Noach, to relax. He had hands to be able to not just web fingers. I don't want to get distracted in Noach now, but he invented tools. He brought comfort and ease to the world. When he was born, the curse from Adam of the thorns growing went away. He brought Noach, he brought Nechama, he brought comfort to the world. When the 12 tribes are born, or when Yitzchak and Yaakov are born, when Yitzchak, each one of them, why is Yitzchak, when he's called when he's born? First they say Abraham has had a child and they called him Yitzchak. The Torah has to explain to you why he was called Yitzchak. Because his tzchok, his laughter, it's a surprise, and the tzchok, the laughter, is something unique. Right? Torah tells you that. And when Yaakov and Leah and when Yaakov is born, Yaakov, why is he called Yaakov? Why is Yaakov called Yaakov? Because he was holding on to the Akev, the heel of his brother. And Esav is called Esav because he was born Asu. He was born, our media manager said we have to take some pictures of the class. So my daughter's following instructions, so don't mind her. Just you can ignore her, pretend like I'm interesting. There you go. So Esav is called Esav because he was born ready-made. And each one of the 12 tribes that are born, we see clearly the Torah, verse after verse, child after child, the Torah explaining to you why they were called the name that they were called. Meaning it wasn't random. It wasn't they went online and Googled most, hottest names for 2026. Oh, I have no idea what the hottest names are. And they found a cool name and they chose the name. There's a spiritual message and a spiritual reason why that name was chosen for that particular person. So I'm going to give you an example, okay? And I'm going to specifically talk about the names of the 12 tribes because that's this week's Torah reading. The Torah reading is repeating the names of the 12 tribes, right? So we'll just do one name. The third child. I've never chosen a class before. Who's the third child of Yaakov and Leah? The third child is Levi. Levi. Why is he called Levi? I didn't bring the verses. I wasn't sure if I'm going to go into it or not, but why is he called Levi? He says, his mother said, Hapam yilave ishi elai. Now my husband will accompany me. Now my husband will accompany me. Meaning, she was feeling very stifled in the marriage because Yaakov's favorite wife was Rachel. Rachel wasn't having children. Leah was having children. She had a first child. She had a second child. And now when she has a third child, she says, now that I have 3 children, I've already given my share, so to say, of the ultimate 12 tribes. And she knew prophetically to be 12 tribes. Now my husband will accompany me. Now he'll feel bonded with me. Now, who is Levi? In the life story of Levi, who is Levi? He is the one that is the priest that bring the Jewish people close to God. Right? Is that not the story of Levi? The story of Levi is the story of the priests who are able to bring us, the Jewish people, the wife of God, together to our husband, to God. So when Leah named her son Levi, you know what she was doing at that moment? Prophetically, already, I'm going to talk about this soon. Prophetically, she was already saying, my child is going to be able to connect Jews with their spiritual, metaphorical husband, God. What I want to bring out now is that it's not that you might think that because Levi, she gave a name, Levi ended up becoming that. It was because Levi had within his soul a certain ability to connect people together or to connect us and God. That's why he was called Levi, meaning the name reflected who he was in his core. In his identity, he was a person that could connect. And therefore, his name was Levi. And that's why he was born third. What's the number 3? What does 3 do? Thank you, Mushka. Appreciate you. Why is he called? What does the number 3 represent? The bringing together of 1 and 2. And that only gets to a class of the number 3, which we talked about before also. But 1 is the idea of loneliness, 2 is the idea of division, and 3 is the idea of harmony, of bringing together. The point is, I don't get this whole class on Levi. I'm giving you an example that the third child born to Jacob was a child who contained within himself the ability to harmonize people and to bring the woman to her husband, which is the job of the priest, to bring the Jews to God. And because this young baby had this inherent divine ability to bring children or women to her husband, to bring the Jews to God, therefore he was given the name Levi that reflects his inner abilities, inner talents. This is a very, very important thing that I'm saying over here. It's not that he's a good boy, he's a good kid, and he had a name, Levi, and he happened to also become a person that brought people together to God. The reason why he was called Levi is because he contained within himself this ability to connect Jews and God.
How did she know that?
Oh, so Michelle's asking a question. How do you know that? I'm waiting for the question. That's an excellent question. Give me 1 more minute to finish this point, and I'm going to answer that question. I'll get a minute and a half. Okay, perfect. So let's make sure. So this is why every single time a child is named in the Torah, to make sure the point is clear, and then I'm going to answer your very good question, which was, how do we know? How did she know? Every single time a child is born in the Torah, should say every time. There might be like an exception, but almost every time that we find a child being born in the Torah and we find it being named, we find a reason for his name. If you think about this now and you pay attention, you know that every person, every time. Everyone in the 12 tribes. And Yehuda and Yisachar, every one of them. Because a name is a reflection of a calling. It's a reflection of a divine identity. It's a reflection of an inner reality within us that has to be reflected, and who we are, that is reflected through our name.
Now you're just given the name of a family that passed away.
So Sadell is asking a question that's kind of similar to Michelle's question, which is, we don't do that today. When we're talking about Leah and Jacob, who were very holy, righteous people, and they had, divine prophecy, so they could know that Levi would one day be the one who would connect the woman and the husband to connect the Jews with God. And Yehuda, I don't get distracted, his idea of the kingdom, and Yehuda is humility, into like Moda'ani, etc., the Jewish people. But today we don't know that. Or in Michelle, that's your question. Today we don't have the ability to do that. And Michelle was asking the same question a little differently because she was saying, how does she know that? And you said, well, she knows she was a prophet. Or a prophetess. We don't know that. So, my friends, I want to explain to you that every single time a parent names a child, they are given a spirit of nevuah, of prophecy, to be able to name their child. Every single time. So the Arizal writes that when a parent names a child, they have a spirit of nevuah, a spirit of prophecy resting upon them. And God helps them choose the name that will reflect that child's identity. Do you think that Leah knew that one day the third child would be the one that would bring the Jews closer to God? She didn't know that. She didn't know the full extent of what she herself was saying when she said, I'm going to call this child Levi because now my husband will accompany me. She was thinking about her relationship with her husband. But she didn't realize that she was also describing how this particular third child number 3, the child of harmony, is a child that will be able to bring the Jewish people closer to their husband, closer to God. But the fact that she didn't know what she was saying at the time she said it doesn't mean it was any less true. And just like she was able to prophesy without knowing what she was prophesying at the time that she named her child, the same is true with every single Jewish mother and father. But mothers usually have that intuition even stronger. Till today, when we name our children, we have a spirit of Ruach HaKodesh resting upon us. Spirit of Ruach HaKodesh resting upon us. Now, I wasn't actually planning on saying this story, but I think I will. So my second daughter, her name, I felt this. I just want to say what I'm telling you now is something that I've personally experienced in my life. I've experienced it in my life where I wasn't sure even of a name. And then the name came with the spirit of Ruach HaKodesh. There was divine help, divine intuition in choosing the name. And sometimes, even when I knew what the name would be, there were still signs that we got that it was meant to be. I'll tell you 2 stories. One, I asked my wife for, I don't think she'll mind. And look, it's fine. I'll tell you the personal stories and the Gemaras that it's going to tell you. Maybe this is going to be the second week in a row that I finish a class with half what I was going to teach, but it's okay. It's okay.
We don't know that.
You don't know that. Yeah, I know that. It's part of my OCD perfectionism if I prepare a class, but it's good. Before I say the story, I want to make sure that we all understand what the takeaway here is. And I'll get to the takeaway, but what the point is here. Every Hebrew name is a reflection of the spiritual identity of the inner core, the inner essence of who the person is. Every single one. And therefore, when Adam named the lion, he called it a lion in Hebrew, an Aryeh, because that name Aryeh reflects the divine energy of a lion. And when the forefathers named Levi, and Yehuda, It was because they may not have clearly known it at that time, but they were identifying the divine mission, the divine energy, the divine capabilities of Levi to be a connector of Jews to God and Yehuda to be a king, etc., etc., etc. And what I'm saying is not only that exists in the times of the Bible, that exists today. Every single one of us, when we name our children, has that spirit of prophecy to know what word, what name reflects our children. So here's a personal story. Happened to me. My second daughter, Simi, was born on Wednesday morning, Yud Daled Tishrei, the 14th of the day of the month of Tishrei. And for those who know the Jewish calendar, what's Yud Daled Tishrei, the 14th of Tishrei? No, close. You don't have to be a Chabadnik to know this answer. It's Erev Sukkot. Sukkot starts on the night of the 15th. So that night was the holiday of Sukkot, and we were having a big Sukkot din in our sukkah. Chana was, of course, overdue, like with all of her kids. And Sidel remembers this because Ira, Alav Shalom, a blessed memory, was in charge of the Kiddush that night. And I remember I came here. My wife had a baby in the morning. She actually was in labor for over 24 hours. She went to labor like on Monday night, and then she had the baby. It was just after midnight on Wednesday morning. Yeah, over 24 hours. They almost gonna do a C-section because after 24 hours, your water can become contaminated. Like you get ready, I guess bacteria can get into the. It was already more than 24 hours from when the water broke, and they were like you have another 20 minutes, something like when she was already pushing. It was like a 26-hour long. It was a long way. Anyway, so she was born early Wednesday morning. Now, Wednesday, the day before Sukkot, is one of the busiest, most hectic days for a Chabad rabbi. Even more than Yom Kippur, building the sukkah and the yasrik and this, and especially in the early years, you have less helpers and less getting it all organized. And we were having a big dinner here, and I remember Ira and Sidel were in charge of the food. So the night of Sukkot, I was here in Shul, and of course, we for rain said a lot of l'chaim. I was like, I just had a baby. It was exciting. And after dinner here, I walked, car, obviously no phone. I walked back to the hospital to sleep in the hospital with Chana. Mushka was probably my parents' house, probably. Most likely Mushka by my parents. And I was here, and then I walked to the hospital. Now, the Chabad custom is that we give the name for a girl at the first possible opportunity, which is very much connected to exactly what I'm explaining in this class. Because the name is not just a name, but it's a reflection of an identity, and actually it's connected to the neshama. The name is not just a name, it's the neshama. That's how you express the neshama. Therefore, when you give the name, that helps the neshama come into the body. For the boy, we wait till the 8th day, but for the girl, we don't wait. The first opportunity, we give the name because that helps the neshama come into the body. So I walked back from the hospital in the morning. It's like 3 miles. I walked back here to Shul in the morning for services and to name my daughter at the Torah. Now, Baruch Hashem, at that time, all 4 of our grandmothers were alive. Both my grandmothers are still alive. Both of Chana's grandmothers were alive. There was no one in the family that we had to give a name to. There was no deceased living female relatives we wanted to give a name to. And we really had no name. We gave Mushka already. We had no name. A lot of the Chabad names like Chana, she, and like Rivka is my mother, and whatever. So we hadn't thought of it. We didn't have a name, and we don't stress about it. Meaning, you wait till the baby's born, and you get a spirit of Ruach HaKodesh. Sometimes you can know before, but you never decide until you hold the baby in your hands, and you can look at the baby and make sure the name feels right. So we come to the hospital it's late at night, after I'm like, what's the name going to be? So it's Sukkot. So I said, maybe Hadassah. Hadassah, right? Shake Hadassah on Sukkot. So you have a little bit of esrog. Somebody says, that's just she didn't like that name. She's like, that's corny. They're calling her Simcha because it's the holiday of Simcha. Sukkot is called Man Simcha Sein. Calling her Hadassah, I can call her Simcha. So it's a beautiful name. I both like the name Simcha. Now, I have to tell you, Simcha is not a typical Chabad girl's name. It's not a Chabad. There's very few Simchas that I know. But this was a name that came into our heads literally that night after she was born. Okay? I wake up in the morning. I wake up. I'm thinking, you really say I slept on the chair of the hospital, whatever time I got back until we talked, until we forgot a name and whatever. I got up at 8 o'clock, whatever time, to walk back to Shul for 10 o'clock services. So, okay, we agreed. Simcha, she was sleeping, she was out of it. I'm walking. I have a whole hour of walking to think. First I had a chance to think. I'm thinking Simcha is not a good idea for a name because it's both a boy and girl's name. It's like a gender neutral name. I know my uncle is Avram Simcha. I know boys that have named Simcha. So the name just Simcha and nothing else is like it's a boy's name, a girl's name. So I think really I should add at least another name. That it should be like a girl's name. But I didn't speak to my wife about it. On the other hand, I know she would agree because like she didn't. It was like a random pick Simcha. It wasn't like she felt strongly about this, that it was something that was important to her. So and the logic is logical. I'm sure my wife will agree. So I think we should call her Sarah Simcha. Sarah sounds good. It's a nice name. I decided we should name her Sarah Simcha. The only problem is I have no way of communicating with my wife before I name her Sarah Simcha. It's very dangerous to give your child, a name different than what your wife agreed upon. Very risky. Don't recommend it. I was at a bris. I won't say who. I was at a bris where the father and the mother did not agree on what the name would be. And they were fighting about it up until the moment of the bris. And at the bris, the man just gave the name that he wanted to give. And it was not wasn't a very happy bris. A lot of tears, a lot of emotions there. So here I am. It's 10 o'clock. I'm davening. And the only thing that I'm thinking about, if you want to know what I was thinking there, is what am I going to name this baby? My brain was saying Sarah Simcha. And I'm pretty sure Chana will agree with me. I'm pretty sure that she would agree with the logic. Sarah's nice. It sounds good. Simcha Sarah, Sarah Simcha, Simcha Sarah, like back and forth. I already agree. I'm going to do it. My wife was, I'm sure she didn't agree with the logic. Okay. And I decided that's what I'm doing. I'm going to call it Simcha Sarah. I get into the Torah, at the end of the whole Torah is all I'm thinking about, like this name. Yeah, whatever. So I get the last Aliyah, then after, I got the Aliyah. Yosef was probably, he just walked out before. Yosef was the Gabbai. He comes, what's the name? Maybe I did it myself, I don't remember. When I said the name, I just said Simcha. I didn't say Sarah Simcha, even though that's what I was planning on saying. Okay, I give the name Simcha. Everyone else is happy. And I'm thinking, I made a mistake. I gave the wrong name. I'm telling you, I was like eating myself up inside. This is the wrong, I should have called the Sarah Simcha. Why? I said I was going to, I just chickened out the last second. I just didn't do it because I didn't have Chana's blessings to do it. So I didn't do it. But I know she would agree with me. I'm sure she would agree with. And the whole, can we go outside? We make kiddush, whatever. We have lunch in the sukkah. And then I walk back to the hospital. And the whole walk back, again, the brain has time to think when you're walking, right? And I'm like beating myself up. This is wrong name. I get to the hospital. I tell Chana exactly what happened. And she agreed with me. I should have given the name Sarah Simcha. Simcha is, it's a very not Chabad name. It's just like a Sephardi name. Sephardim use a name like Simcha Nefima, more like Ashkenaz, more of a male name. It's very uncommon. And she agreed that I should have named the name Sarah Simcha, and she actually likes it very much. Which was exactly what I thought she would think. Now it's a 3-day holiday. The rest of the Chag, I'm beating myself up. Why did I give the wrong name? I gave the wrong name. What did I do? In fact, just a side note, just to show you how unnatural a name Simcha is, when I told my grandmother, who's not embarrassed, I told her my daughter's name is Simcha. She told me, you know what she told me? You're joking. That's not really her name. She didn't believe me. She wouldn't call her Simcha. That's not. My grandmother's very if she doesn't like something, she'll just tell you to your face. That's a stupid name. I don't know what you were thinking. I don't approve of the name. Sorry. Literally, she didn't approve of the name. And she told it to me to my face. So after the holiday's over, it was a 3-day holiday. I called up my father and I said, what should I do? I want to add a name. I want to change my daughter's name. What's the process? How do I change a name? So I told him, Simcha's she said, okay, what name do you want to give? So I tell him, Sarah Simcha. So he says, you can't name Sarah Simcha. My mother's mother, whose name I always thought was Razel, actually Sarah Razel. Her name is Sarah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that her name was Sarah. That was just Razel or Rosa. I didn't know her name was Sarah Razel. Now I know I have to pray for her, but I didn't know. And if I would have named her Sarah, if I would have known what I thought I wanted to name her, I would have given a name that would have been much, much in my mind. And so God literally, I was planning on saying Sarah Simcha. That's literally what I was planning on saying. And I don't know, I chickened out. I didn't say it. And that was obviously not meant to be. And if you know my daughter Simcha, she's a girl that emanates a lot of Simcha, a lot of joy. It's a name that absolutely, totally fits her personality, 100%. There's a natural joy and happiness to her. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another story. My daughter Menucha was born. So Menucha is named after Chana's grandmother. And we knew already, once my wife became pregnant, like we knew at that point, I mean, if she would have we didn't know if she was having a boy or a girl. We didn't do ultrasound, at least not at that point. But if it would be a girl, like we both agreed, like, her grandmother passed away, and we'll name her Menucha. And then shortly afterwards, my wife, like before even people knew she was pregnant, my wife had a dream where she saw her grandmother Menucha standing on a street corner and her face was glowing. And she saw my wife and she came over to give a big hug and a kiss, said Mazel Tov. She said Mazel Tov the baby, just like a Mazel, give her a hug and a kiss. And like, that was a clear sign, like right when we found we were pregnant, like we didn't even know it was a girl. That Menucha came to her Bubby Menucha came to her in a dream, a baby. Now it happens also be that she was born on Tisha B'Av, which if you know Tisha B'Av is the birthday of Mashiach. And Mashiach is Menachem Shmo. His name is Menachem. And Menucha is a female version of Menachem. On the birthday of Mashiach, his name is Menachem. So like it's a name that fits her. Menucha, it's a perfect name. I have a story about son Meir Shalom when he got his name. I didn't know Meir's name until the night before his bris. It's another whole story. It's another story. Other stories. Also, all grandfathers were alive. We know we had to name, besides for Zalman. My grandfather Zalman, my son Zalman's after Zalman. So there was no living relative, there's no relatives at the name. God sent us a sign. See the story? I mean, I have so much more in the class to say. The point is, when you give a name, the spirit of nevuah that rests upon the parents to help them, not knowingly, but to help give a name that reflects part of the identity of the person. And knowing that is very, very empowering. It's very, very important. I'm just trying to think what I should end off with. But this is a very important idea. What? Say again?
How did you get Simi?
Simi is a nickname.
Simi is a nickname.
Simi is a nickname. Her name is Simcha. But still, we wanted to make it like a little more feminine. So Simi is a nickname, but her name is... So a nickname is just a nickname. That's a name, a way of calling you. You can call someone whatever you want to call them. I call you Mrs. Klur. That's the way I call you. That's fine. But your Hebrew name is what reflects your neshama. Okay? That's what reflects your soul. And that's when we pray for you, pray by your Hebrew name. There's many, many stories of the Rebbe where people came to the Rebbe to pray for someone. We always want to know their Hebrew name, their mother's Hebrew name, where they made a mistake on the Hebrew name and the Rebbe corrected them. Because the energy of the neshama was not being reflected in the incorrect name that the person gave them. You understand that? If I was going to pray for Ruvain, you, Ruvain, now, to me, Ruvain, whatever, I don't know, I don't feel the energy of your soul, but I could feel the energy of your soul, and your real name was Ruvain Yitzchak, and I only said Ruvain, I'd be missing part of your energy of your soul. Now, so Alice was saying she didn't have a Hebrew name until her chuppah, and I want to go through some Hebrew names here. Everyone that's watching, you show your Hebrew names. So I want you to know that it's never too late to get a Hebrew name. I'll tell you what, let's do one piece of Talmud. I want to read to you one thing. So you'll see how this is in the positive and in the negative. The Talmud says as follows. Look at the Talmud Barachot 7b, at the end of the, it's giving the whole story, the Gemara about, there's a story here in the Gemara in Yoma, but they came to an inn, and the man's name was Kidor. I'll read it very quick. He said Rabbi Meir he would look at people's names. And based on their names, he knew what kind of person they were. He could tell a person by the name. He came to an inn, the guy's name was Kidor. So Kidor, that reminds me of a verse. The verse says Kidor tapuches heim, which in English means it's a generation of reversals, a generation of dishonest people that are not straight, that they change. I don't trust this guy. The other rabbis that are with him, they trusted him. They gave him their wallets to watch overnight and in the morning, but then he never got it. And Meir didn't give him his money for safekeeping. He didn't get robbed. And they asked him, how did you know? So Rabbi Meir said to them, why did you not examine his name? His name shows on a unrighteous personality. And we have a Gemara here in Berachot 7b, regarding the basic assumption that it's talking about go through all the names of the tribes, the spies. Each one of the names of the 12 spies that went to go scout at Israel, each one of their names is a reflection of how they would sin. The Talmud goes through their 12 names, how their names reflect that they would do sins. I'm not going through 12 names right now. From where do we derive that the name affects one's life? So Eliezer said that the verse says, go see the work of Hashem. Asher Sam, if you read the Hebrew, Asher Sam Shamos Ba'aretz, which literally translates to mean he made desolation in the land. I should have highlighted this. But the word Shamos could also be Shemos, like Shemot, this week's Torah reading. Do not read it as Shamot, rather as Shemot names. The names given to people are there for the works of the Lord upon the earth. I did this a little quickly, maybe too quickly, but there's a point here. The point is, the name of a child creates, or not creates, think about it, reflects the divine energy and the divine flow of this person. And there are absolutely names that I'm not going to say here on recording of certain people, certain names that you see. Tempted not. It's hard to not say names, and these names are on the tip of my tongue. Like a Levi Yitzchak, for example. Any Levi Yitzchak will have a certain energy to them. Because both Levi and Yitzchak are Gvura, Levi's Yitzchak, whatever. There's a certain energy. A name reflects an energy. And if you pick a good name, and you give a good name to your child, or the name of a righteous person, that righteous person's energy carries on into this next person, which is part of why we give names to people that pass away, righteous people, because of their righteousness. And if you're watching this online, you want to share your Hebrew name, I would love to see people's Hebrew names. Please share. And I want to answer this question. I want to say one more thing. If your name reflects how a person will sin, do we still have the ability to not sin? Excellent question. Yeah. Maybe that'll be next week's class. If your name reflects how a person will sin, do you have the ability to not sin? The answer in short, Ravit, is absolutely. And if a person is called Russia, can he still be a good person? I'll give you an example. Ravit. What if someone calls their child Nimrod? I know there's a few Nimrods too. I don't, with all due respect to the parents of those people, why you name your child after someone that rebelled against God? Does that mean that the person has to be a rebeller against God? No. Just like it says someone born in the 6th hour has a mazel of blood. Doesn't mean you're going to be a murderer. You can be a doctor. You can be a mohel and do circumcisions. Doesn't mean you have to be. So you can rebel against conventional norms. You can rebel against those that say you can't and say I'll. And you can become successful on things that people thought couldn't be done. Rebelling in and of itself is not a bad trait. It's a trait of rebellion. And someone that's called Nimrod is going to have an energy of rebelliousness within them, because that's what the word means. That's what the word means. But you can rebel in the holy way. So that's the answer to your question, Ravit, in short. And I'm looking at everyone sending in the Jewish names, Rachel and Abigail and Livsha. Livsha is not I don't know what Livsha means. I'm sure Livsha means Malka Zelda and Leah and Chazkel Mordechai and Yehudis. But so what about if you don't have a Hebrew name, or if you're not sure your Hebrew name? So you can get a Hebrew name. A boy gets a name by their bris, and if they didn't have a bris, then they didn't have a bris. And if they had a circumcision in the hospital, but they didn't have an actual naming, because there's a process called the hatafas dam, which basically is you take a little prick of blood, literally a prick. If they use what diabetics use to check their blood, So it's literally, you don't even need a Band-Aid afterwards. But you have to have the blood, which is the whole problem with a clamp. Circumcision, they use a clamp. I'm going to go off subject. Is when there's no blood, there's a whole problem, whatever. But so there's blood, a prick, and there's a blessing that you make, and you can give a Hebrew name. For a woman, she gets at the Torah, there's a way like a naming. She's not a baby anymore, but an older woman could have a girl naming or a naming at the Torah. And then the man gets called to the Torah by the name that they got. And they get a Jewish name. A convert goes to the mikvah and they choose a Jewish name. And that becomes their name. And those names, you have to be careful when you choose a name to make sure you're choosing the name of a righteous person, name of someone holy, name of someone that you want your children to emulate and to carry on their personality. And there are indeed many, many, many stories about people that carried on the energy of, like, they were named after someone and they were like them. They had certain characteristics and certain tendencies that they took from that person. Certain names. Shana, for example. Chain, like things like that. Like, what's Chana? Give me an example, my wife. What's Chana from? Chain. Chain means a certain grace, a certain beauty, a certain like charm that she has. It's something that carries in the person. And you named after a person, whatever. I don't know. There's a lot there. So choosing a name is a very important thing. But what I want to close with this. The reason why, and I had a beautiful story from the Holocaust, but I'm not going to share it tonight. So for another time. Here's what I want to close with. The reason why the entire second book of the Bible is called Shmos. In Hebrew, it's not called Exodus. It's not called slavery and freedom. It's called Shmos. Is because the reason why the Jews earned the merit and were able to maintain an inner sense of identity as Jews and not to become totally defined by the Egyptian culture in which they lived is because, as the Medrash says, Lo shinu es shmam, they did not change their names. They went to Egypt like Reuven and Shimon, and they came out carrying the names Reuven and Shimon. They kept their identity. And they didn't become slaves. They stayed true to who they are. And today, Baruch Hashem, we don't live in slavery. Today, thank God, there's no taskmasters forcing us to do anything. But the pressure of Egypt, the social pressure, the pressure to conform, the pressure to give up our identity, to become like American culture wants us to be is very, very strong. Very, very strong. And the way we're able to combat that, the way we're able to find a way to stay true to who we are is by staying true to the enduring power of our Jewish names. So first you got to know your Jewish name. Make sure your kids know the Jewish name and use it. Use it. Maybe not going to change what you're known by work, but to live with your name, to appreciate your name, to learn about your name, to know about your namesake. I could tell you the entire story of my great-grandfather, who I'm named after, Yaakov, and how when he passed away, he came to his sister in a dream to save his children. He died of hunger in the siege in Leningrad. It's a whole story. But to know the story who you named after, know their story, because your story, you're carrying that tradition, you're that chain that continues them. Know the story of your name, story of the name of the person you're carrying. Know the story of the original Yaakov, or the original Esther, or the original Noach, or whatever your name is. To carry it, to cherish it, and at least in maybe some way, to start using that Jewish name in some context, in some capacity, to start identifying with it more clearly, because that Jewish name is not just a label. It's not just a name. It's a reflection of your soul. And when you recognize that and you use that, you help reveal more of your neshama. You help bring out more of the soul that you carry within you. So share your Jewish names. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's Jewish names. We can talk about that. And if you want to ask me later, privately, what your Jewish name is or what it means, I'd be glad to give you some insight and wisdom into that. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Carmen. Glad you enjoyed. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Mindy. No wonder. Yaakov Moshe. Yeah, it's a beautiful name. Yeah. Moshe is as pure as it comes, 100%. Gila. Gila is a beautiful name. You know what Gila means, Dana? Gila means to sing, to rejoice. Gila, Arena. It's a beautiful name, Gila. Is there a Hebrew version of Dana? Now, by the way, you have some names that are not originally Hebrew that became like Hebrew names, like Donna, for example, became a Hebrew name because a lot of Jews had it. No, Isha is not usually used as a name. That's correct. It's a good question. Donna is a name that people use. Another woman would be Chava is called the mother of all living things. The name Chava, when God called her Chava, because she's the Ein Kol Chai, the mother of all living things. So think about it. Something to think about. It's a good question. Thank you, Lori. Toda. I'm glad you like it. What is Marielana? Is that Spanish? I don't know what Marielana is. Tell me what it means. I can tell you what it's in Hebrew, maybe. I don't know. Marieliana. I don't know. Liba. Liba is a beautiful name. Liba means love. It's also Lev. Lev is heart. And Lev is heart in Hebrew. And Liba in Yiddish is love. Thank you, Art. I'm glad you enjoyed. Have a safe week to yourself as well. Thank you, Donna. Clara. Okay, Abigail. Let's go. Abigail. Abigail is a beautiful story. Andrea. Abigail is a beautiful name. Abigail is a very wise woman. Abigail was the wife of Novel. And by the way, I did not talk about Novel in today's class, but Abigail is a good name. In short, Novel was her husband. He sinned against King David. And when King David was going to kill Novel, she came out, she got him drunk, and she came out to King David, and she calmed David down. She said he acted wickedly because his name is Novel, which means an active person. At that moment, he died a natural death. He had a heart attack. And Abigail married King David. And in fact, on every tombstone it says, your soul should be bound with the bond of life. Those are the quote of the words of Abigail. There's more to say. Laila Tov, Web. Okay. Last name's not important. It's the first one that reflects the soul. Okay. Good night, everyone. Laila Tov. And